It's always an interesting week when you hear two unrelated stories about the same person within a day of each other. That happened to me this week, and I'm going to share the story, which has led me to ask you this question. What do sports, pizza, and skin cancer have in common? Stay tuned and you'll find out. This is the Wishing You Well podcast, and I'm your host, Maria Patrick. Thank you for joining me for this week's Wellness Prescription, where we pay attention to what is trending in the news and use those stories as education and inspiration to be healthier and happier. If you are new and wondering who I am, take a look in the description box to find out everything you need to know about me. This week's inspiration comes from someone who is a household name to many people, but perhaps you've never heard of him. His name is David Portnoy, and he is the founder and CEO of Barstool Sports, which is a website that covers sports news and pop culture. It's been around for over 20 years, and it was originally started as a print publication, a 4-page sports newspaper that Portnoy handed out on subway platforms and street corners in Boston, Massachusetts. It ended up going from printed form to a website a few years later in 2007, and it grew into a multimedia empire, producing blogs, videos, podcasts, and even hosting live events. If you think Barstool Sports can't be that big a deal because you've never heard of it, allow me to tell you that Dave Portnoy sold a 36% stake in his company in 2020 for $163 million. You heard me correctly, million. And the remainder of the company was sold in 2023 for $388 million. And in what can only be considered one of the most brilliant business moves ever, Portnoy was able to repurchase Barstool in August 2023 for the whopping sum of $1. I found out about this company from my two sons, who follow Portnoy's internet show called One Bite Pizza Reviews. The show is one in which he reviews pizza from restaurants around the world. Dave's mission is to taste and review a different pizza place every day until he's tried them all. He has over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, over 3 million on X, formerly Twitter, and over 5 million on Instagram. The video reviews that he posts are filmed as he is taste testing the pizza in real time. He walks into the shop to pick up his order, steps outside on the street to taste the pizza, and the rule is that he rates the slice after the first bite, hence the name One Bite Pizza Reviews. Portnoy began his show with the goal of reviewing every pizza place in Manhattan, New York City, in 2017. The pizza review shows become so popular and widely watched that some reviews feature celebrity guests, and pizza shop owners everywhere would love to have Dave stop by, taste what they're making, and give them a great review. Dave ranks the pizzas on a scale from 0 to 10, and he rarely ranks a pizza above a 9.0. The lucky recipients of praise and a high score from Dave end up having their business soar in both growth and popularity, even going viral. Well, last week, my family and I were invited to meet a friend of ours out for dinner, and she recommended that we eat at a local pizza place near her home called MARISA'S. We were pleasantly surprised when we realized that MARISA'S had been visited by Dave Portnoy last year, and that they were lucky enough to receive one of his great reviews. I will link the video in the description box. Spoiler alert, while they did get a great review and the pizza was every bit as wonderful as Dave said it was, they did not get one of the coveted 9 out of 10. And also, If you are someone offended by curse words, you may want to take a pass on watching the video. The very next day, after we enjoyed our delicious pizza dinner, Dave Portnoy was in the news. So here I was hearing about this guy who isn't usually on my radar screen 2 days in a row. This time, it was for a health reason, and it caught my attention, of course. Dave Portnoy announced that he had just beat cancer. He was asked during a podcast filming about the scar and bandage on his neck, and he explained that he had recently gone to the doctor for a skin check because he had noticed a mole on his neck. The test did come back as cancerous, which the doctors were thankfully able to surgically remove. Portnoy went on to say that it was only a basal, which he was referring to a type of skin cancer called basal cell carcinoma that begins in the basal cells, the cells within the skin that produce new skin cells as the old ones die off. There are several different types of skin cancer, basal cell carcinoma being the most common form, affecting nearly 1 in 5 Americans, which is most commonly caused by excess exposure to ultraviolet radiation over a long period of time, specifically from sunlight and or tanning beds. Dave said that he's pretty sure his case was because he lies in the sun all day long with no sunscreen on, and that he wants people to notice his scar and ask him about it. Dave said he's cured and that the entire process wasn't a difficult one and that he's glad he took care of it. I think that when someone turns their mess into a message, that a lot of good can come from it, and Dave's story is a great example. Now you know what sports pizza and skin cancer have in common. David Portnoy. 2 other celebrities were recently in the news describing their own experiences coming down with basal cell carcinoma, musician Kevin Jonas and model Christy Brinkley. These recent public cases can and should serve as a great reminder to us all on getting ourselves checked, taking precautions for prevention, and doing everything we can to catch any problems early on. I have a very dear friend, Lisa, who is a great reminder about this. She is wonderful about getting to her doctor's appointments regularly on schedule. She doesn't miss them, and taking care of things early on, being very proactive. The risk factors for getting carcinoma include having light skin, having a history of skin cancer, and also being over the age of 50. However, we have to remember and keep in mind that people are getting diagnosed and treated younger and younger these days, which many dermatologists report that they think it's linked to increased use of tanning beds. So you might be asking right now, where should we be checking ourselves and what are we looking for? It most commonly develops on the areas of the body that are exposed to the sun, like the head, the ears, the face, the neck. According to the Mayo Clinic, great authority on this subject, you want to pay close attention to a growth or a sore on your skin, especially one that doesn't heal. You're looking for something that may be shiny. It could be a skin-colored bump or a slightly raised brown, black, or blue lesion. Sometimes it may appear as a flat, scaly patch. It may have a raised edge or edges, and it could also look like a white, waxy, scar-like lesion. Any of these are likely to be more pigmented on patients with darker skin. Basal cell carcinomas can also be itchy, they can ooze, they can bleed or scab over. In some cases, they may grow over time. The Skin Cancer Foundation has put out warnings. They want us to realize that basal cell carcinomas can resemble very ubiquitous non-cancerous skin conditions like eczema and psoriasis. So they warn us that it's important to have anything that has just emerged as new or is changing over time or looks unusual, to have those things checked out by a dermatologist and to get yourself an accurate diagnosis like Dave did via a biopsy. So this may have you wondering about treatment. The most effective and commonly used treatment of basal cell carcinomas are surgical procedures where they remove thin layers of the skin and examine them for signs of cancer. The process would continue layer by layer until no cancer cells remain. The wound would then get stitched up and over time would heal naturally. I'm pretty sure that Dave said he had 12 or 13 stitches. There's a chance that you might have to have other forms of surgery, including one known as excisional surgery, where the surgery goes in using a scalpel to remove the entire growth, including the surrounding tissues, or maybe even cryosurgery, which involves freezing of the cells. In many cases, the good news is that once basal cell carcinoma is removed, no further treatment is necessary. But like with any other condition of this type, we would want to continue to monitor ourselves and get followed up by our doctors, by our health practitioners, to monitor for any recurrences. I think that in addition to early detection, prevention is the key. And what we're going to want to do to protect ourselves is to make sure that we're using a broad spectrum sunscreen. You're going to want to use one that has an SPF of 30 or higher. And the important thing here is to not only use it when the sun is out or when the weather's warm and you're outside, but all of the time, and to reapply it regularly. Dermatologists suggest every 2 hours, and even more if you've been in water or if you've been exercising and sweating. Another way that we can protect ourselves is to wear protective clothing and to wear hats. I don't go outside this time of year particularly without a wide brim hat. The manufacturers now of clothing are coming up with all of this protective clothing that has an ultraviolet protective factor built into it. Last year, I received a lovely and thoughtful gift from one of my dear friends, and that was a swimsuit cover-up which had the ultraviolet protective factor built right into it. The last couple of protective pieces of advice to prevent ourselves from getting any basal skin cell carcinomas, I think, are quite obvious. One is to avoid the tanning beds, avoid long exposure in the sun, and to perform regular skin self-check exams. The self-checks should be considered additional on top of getting an annual full-body skin exam from your dermatologist. So we're going to want to focus on year-round protection and vigilance as the key to preventing basal cell carcinomas and other types of skin cancer. So that is this week's wellness report. It's a cautionary tale for us all. Dave said that his cancer was discovered because he's starting to get on top of himself, which leads us to a great takeaway from this story: to take precautions, to stay on top of our health, to schedule appointments to get checked, and to do it sooner rather than later. I am not putting it off any longer, and I hope you won't either. Until next time, I am wishing you well.